here and
pick
go
up anytime.
I just thought, start here, go up to the chapel, go into the chapel, and interview them about the art,
Well, I
right?
mean, you can do this stuff anytime.
Okay,
And
yeah,
put it
and then
together.
cut it in? Okay,
Yeah,
see,
do
I
it
don't...
on a bright sunny day or anything you want to do.
Okay, yeah.
I have an appointment.
John, I'll let you carry that heater.
No matter being in front, you can introduce him or somebody else if you want him on camera.
Go for it.
All right.
Can I be out of the video but listen?
Yeah, we're here to get the story of the beautiful painting that's gone into this chapel. It's such a wonderful part of the history of Port Aransas. And here with us this morning is...
John, I'm John Cobb.
Tell us when and where you were born, John.
I was born in Austin in '54, and during high school moved to Corpus. I was a surfer, got into art, gosh, all the way back in when I was 7. I had some classes with Joe Kane in Corpus. I remember every Saturday man, I didn't get to do what everybody else got to do. I had to go to art class. But I hung with it, I stuck in and stuck it out. I like to do art.
You made a living that way?
Yeah, it's a difficult business, but I'm able to keep things together.
Can you tell me how it was that you came to get the commission to do this beautiful little chapel?
Well, it was there was this artist in Mississippi. His name was Walter Anderson, and he was really an interesting soul. He had done some community buildings and had done mural painting similar to this. And I remember they paid him $1. I don't know, Frank, did you pay me anything, Frank? I don't think Frank paid me anything.
No, I didn't. You refused.
I refused, so there wasn't a great deal of money transpired between us, but I think we got it done.
Yes, you got it done beautifully. Now, how do we connect the man that inspired you to the job? What happened in between? This fellow.
Well, Walter Anderson had done community murals. He lived on the coast. It's called what were the Channel Islands or something off of Mississippi. And he had a little rowboat. He would go to this one island called Horn Island. He made a log trip of his daily encounters with wildlife and the natural surroundings. And this kind of artwork sort of fits in that milieu, really, of southern graphic art of coastal plains, you know.
Yeah, the genre is perfect, but how did you end up with the commission? What happened? Who hired you or asked you?
You know, I didn't know exactly. I guess I'm not sure I really want to get into the religious part of it, but
Please do.
well, it was. I moved out here and kind of went through a number of troubles and finally managed to come out the other side. But it really helped me to kind of feel like I was able to express what was going on with me, to be able to work in here. And it was really kind of a privilege instead of something that somebody wanted from me. And I enjoyed working and living over at Frank's house and spending the time to come up here, because it's real quiet, real nice. Nobody bothers you. I guess, I don't know what year that was, Frank.
Been many years ago.
Been quite a few now.
Probably 20 years at least.
20, 25.
At least, yeah.
And so I spent, I don't know, about a month initially. And the major part of this job was getting off the paint. And at that time, man, the only door that would open was this main door, and it was so dusty in here that you couldn't even see 2 feet. And I wore a respirator and stuff. We hammered and sanded and blasted the paint that was on here. And we got it down like I wanted it, and we put high glue on it. It's a natural animal high glue, and then we made quite a few batches of homemade gesso, which is whiting and marble dust and titanium white. You heat it. It was during the winter we started. It was Christmas time. And so I had to run down there and heat the pot, bring it back, heat the pot, bring it back. Finally, we got it all covered. And then I was ready to start painting.
So this is a fresco.
Yeah, it's really it's similar to fresco. It's as close as I could get. I mean, after we had stripped this thing, there was still a residue of that polymer resin impregnated in the wall itself. So there was no way to plaster over that and actually do fresco painting. So what we did was I just assimilated that kind of method using the highly absorbent homemade gesso, and then used the paint in a real thin kind of watercolor style.
So you coated these walls with a preparation of your own, made with high glue from branded animals. Then you created your own gesso. Now what about the paint?
The paint is either watercolor or acrylic. It's just a common paint, you know, anybody uses it. And it has real good properties as long as it probably doesn't get too thick. And that's how I wanted it. I wanted it kind of thin, like some of the painting I had seen, the fresco painting I had seen in Europe when I was younger, going to school.
Well, so let me back up just a little bit. You're more or less a native son. You grew up in Corpus, spent a lot of time in Corpus, and then came over here and became a surfer.
Yeah.
And fell in love with Port A, moved here, had some tough times. And this chapel kind of inspired you. And when you came out from your troubles, you wanted to make a contribution to the town.
Yeah, that's right.
And you brought a really particular skill here. Where did you pick up the skill of making all these various homemade products that you used to create this fresco?
Well, you know, with artists, there was one particular handbook by Ralph Myers called Handbook of Artist Materials. It's really the Bible of modern painting principles, and we just picked that up. I have since begun working in egg tempera since this work was completed, and I continue to use methods that were pretty tried and true, or tried to.
Is there any model for this anywhere in the world? I mean, is there someplace else in the world where these techniques are still used?
Well, you know, there is some fresco painting. It's kind of odd that modern society is very expedient, you know, and this particular egg tempera or fresco painting is very time involved. It's a real laborious kind of preparation of the surface, and a real constant desire for quality, and it takes time. And when you take that time, then the things that you do become more precious to you, you know. And so I felt like a statement like this chapel was something that was, and I tried to do what I could.
Okay. Just take it. Ready? Good. Will you take us through the kind of the chronology of how you painted this?
Yeah,
I'll just relive it.
I began this thing. Actually, you know, the whole ceiling I started in stars. I think there's a few stars left here. You see them? And the stars were the bands that I left after I introduced these panels. So I began to think the whole thing was stars. And then eventually these sections were imposed upon the stars. And so the ceiling was one of the first things that I actually had to begin, because as stuff falls, it gets on the walls. So I began initially to do the ceiling, and as I say, it was just blue and white and kind of purple. You can see them, that band is left there. But it used to be stars everywhere. And I guess some of them fell. But chronologically, I started on this side. This is the Old Testament wall here. I have the creation of earth, and I think this is a planet. This is the moon right here. And so it starts right here. And then Adam and Eve are here. I guess we had a short controversy. We had to put in a fig leaf or a loincloth, right, Frank? Mm-hmm. But, it's essentially a kind of, pure place, It's nice to believe that's where it began. And then I would separate these scenes with I think this was sunflowers. You've seen them? They grow around here quite often. Mm-hmm. They're kind of blue, You ever seen them? They're kind of blue. You think, wow, that's not that green, but... So I came up with sort of motifs. Down at the bottom is a wave motif. And this scene right here is the sacrifice of Isaac. And that was his father Abraham. This was a scene of the Israelites that traveled through the Sinai. By night they had a fire, and by day they had a cloud of smoke. It's sort of, you have to kind of squint your eyes a little bit, but it's done real hastily and real dramatically, and I think I've got quite a series of sketches that I had in mind for each section of these walls. And then originally this was Moses here. I've changed him in the last couple of years to Job. This was the burning bush. And I changed Moses. You can still see the 10 there. And but since that time, this became Job, and I put wounds on him. And this kind of net that he's holding over his head is some kind of sieve that I think he's trying to distill some sort of understanding of God about. And this was the first temple. It's a kind of a floor plan for the tabernacle, I think it's called, where they put the commandments in an ark, and they carried it, and they made this portable temple.
Want to take a break?
Yeah. Okay.
You're doing great.
It's interesting.
You're doing great.
It's funny.
Quiet on the set.
Oh, I want to get out of the way.
Now, as we get closer up here, I began to include a few sort of personal elements, even though I wanted to stay, with things that I got directly from the Bible. I also began to, you might want to take a closer picture of these. These are figures kind of on their way to the altar. And if you look at them it's kind of curious how some have their hands on their head and others are very reluctant. Others are persuading. I think here is even the Lord himself. And people that are fancy, and people that are simple, and people that have beautiful clothes, and people that almost have no clothes at all. And so it's a sort of, it's a kind of way to describe how it is we get where we're going. And I think it's a very distinct kind of place we go. And we're trying to help one another do that. This is the Jewish symbol for Hanukkah. And as I got closer up here, this became a sort of cosmic thing because I had used this sculpture here to make the focal point of the church. And also, there's a kind of aerial view here of Corpus Christi Bay. I think that we've got a boat here, and we had 12 pretty good men there, and that's just a kind of symbol of them. On the right, I used the Bible in a very real way, and it was a way for me that helped me to distinguish what I needed to do and who I could be. So the main text of this is 1 John. I think it's chapter 25, and it's called "Test the Spirits." It's a very important passage, and it's a very inclusive one. On the left and on the right is a cardinal. There's a cardinal here. And on the right is a lovebird. You know, I think somebody even has a bird down the hill. Is that a lovebird, Frank? Or is that a
It's
parrot?
some sort of parakeet.
Oh, it's a parakeet.
It gets loose every now and then. Hope he's coming.
Good. Again, the people on their way, some are old, some are young, some have burdens. You know, and some introduce one another. Some find out who they are on their way. Some are enthusiastic, and some are sorrowful. These are local plants that grow in the dunes around here. We try and keep these grasses long, but we're going to try and avoid the fires if we can. Didn't we have one last year? This side, we're moving towards the New Testament. And I began here with Jesus calling Andrew and his brother, who were fishermen. And it was an important aspect of our community in Port Aransas. So it's kind of symbolic in a way. It's not really very literal. I also included here the psalmists, which the psalms can be found in the little green edition of the Bible that I've seen some sailors carry. And so the psalms are in here. And this is Pentecost. After the resurrection, they were in a room together, and the people had a spirit descend upon them, and they had flames on their heads. This is the calling of Saul, who was struck down on the road to Damascus and became Paul, a very astute intellectual who realized an amazing quality and the amazing quality and truth of the Bible and what it meant. These were from particular psalms, dancing, singing, musical instruments, with these wave banners underneath. This is the city of God, a place with many mansions that He's made some kind of plan for. This is the stoning of Stephen. And that about does it for the...
Take a break.
yeah.
So,
But the,
Oh, we got to do the ceiling.
Yeah.
Okay, should we do Revelations or the ceiling?
Your call.
Let's do the ceiling. Okay, we'll start this cosmological thing here. We wanted everything to end up where it's supposed to be and where it started from. And this is the kind of place that I just, I don't know, almost like a child thought about doing. And then this is the Immaculate Conception of Mary, her realization that she will have a child. And there's a number of people next to her. Some of them are sisters and some of them are loving people. Some of them had children and some are leprechauns. This is out of Daniel in the Old Testament. There's an angel here holding Daniel in her hands. There's a scale. There's a number of beasts and rather wild, imaginative characters. It's rather a fearsome book and pretty scary. I tried to translate those kinds of seven-headed leopards and gargantuan varieties of mythological creatures. This is the tree of life. There's quite a number of different kinds of fruit that grow in it, and the leaves of this particular tree will heal the nations. I got tired of being too literal here, so I just went straight into something I've always enjoyed, and it's part of the environment here. I just did this little seascape, and this window is so nice. A lot of times that light will kind of radiate into the side, kind of make that thing glow. I love the seaside and what this place stands for around here, and so that's kind of a brief kind of a diversion, but it's something everybody admires, and I thought it ought to be part of it. This is a vision that was given to Peter and it was sort of contrary to his Jewish understanding of the gospel, and it took him a while to realize what it was he needed to understand, and he grew to do that. He's one of the people I admire probably the most in the Bible. He's a very family-oriented person, and he grappled with quite a few conflicts. This is the resurrection right here. Jesus is ascending to his throne. He's the apostles below. I think there's an angel in here somewhere talking to him. And they're looking up. I think that the angel says to him, why are you men of Galilee looking up? This person will return in the same way you see him go.
no idea.
We're going to move from the Lamb into Revelations because it plays a major part in the story. To finish speaking about the ceiling here, there's a lamb kind of in the middle of everything. It's a very important kind of character. It's not a myth at all. It's a kind of symbol in a way, and it was important in the sacrifice that happened in the temple, and it's some kind of innocence that I really wanted to have. So that's kind of the main focus here. And then as we move, we'll follow this band of stars here, and then this end wall is Revelations. This end wall is it's kind of touching here to have Frank's mom has a little blurb on her being a poet, and she was the original person that started this little chapel, and I think her main interest, I guess, was children. Is that right, Frank? Your mom built the chapel?
Yeah.
You want to say a few words about your mom? Or?
Either one, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
You ready? Well, the most frequently question that I usually get is, when was the chapel built? It was built in the late 30s, about 38, 37, someplace along in there. And it was built by my mother, Alene, who was a very religious and dedicated person. And one of the first things that she did when we bought the property was to put this little chapel up here, because there was no other church on the island at that time, and she built it for the children of Porturenses. This was built by a woman by the name of Ethel Harris, who was the custodian of the San Antonio Missions. And she spent a lot of time in the hill country. All of these, we'd come down on weekends, and all of these flagstone steps and floor were got from the hill country. So anyhow, our next step was to get the children of the island interested in the chapel. So she started, we'd come down on weekends, had the house right next door that my brother they'd won a lawsuit, and in lieu of that, he gave this to the family. It was that house and the one across the street were the only houses up here on the hill at that time. So to entice the children to come to services, she started this ice cream and cake affair. That got to be pretty funny as it went on. And we used to tell her that those kids don't care anything about your service, all they want is the ice cream and cake. Well, this went on until probably World War II, and we sort of lost out there. In the meantime, the place had deteriorated, something terrible, and I'd come down, I was building up a rental business on the side, and the chapel had gone to seed. All of these nice windows that are now put in, I had just plexiglass for the windows there. So anyhow, eventually, this property got too heavy for me. We had a whole acre here, that we bought the whole thing back in 1938 for $3,800. Can you imagine that? So I sold half of my property here to my brother, and he is the one that has renovated it into the nice place that John Cobb has turned it into. So of course, he likes a lot of excitement and attention and everything. And so he decided, he said, Frank, you get on the island and try to round up all of the old people that used to be the ice cream and cake bunch. So I got busy and rounded up about a dozen of them, and we had this big party down below. And the funny part about it was that when we had the services up here at the chapel, those kids that used to be, they were so old they couldn't even climb up the hill. So we had to leave all the crutches and the wheelchairs and everything down below and have our party down there. So anyhow, the way John Cobb came into being was that he was very diligently working on the place, getting it fixed up. And I could always tell that he didn't like people around while he worked, so I stayed away. You got somebody out there. I think I invited her yesterday, so tell her to come on in if she wants. So anyhow, John was up here painting, and late one evening he had just got through for the day, and there was some skirmishes outside the door, and he was being attacked by these vandals that had tried to do him in. So anyhow, I got my dog, and I think my son was with me at the time, and we came out here, and we got rid of him. We chased him off with a baseball bat, and a dog that wouldn't have hurt anybody, but they didn't know that. So John had, I think, if I remember correct, he had finished about half of it, and then he disappeared, and he came back several weeks, 7 years, wasn't it? I think he had done half of it, and then he finished up the job very diligently and made this place as beautiful it is today. So a lot of this credit, matter of fact, all of the credit as far as the enhancement is concerned, belongs to my good friend there, John Cobb.
Well, let's see, Frank, I think...
Tell me what you want me to say, and I'll say it.
No, I mean,
You want me to say
what other
something?
story was there?
I can tell you some instances that we had up here at the nobody would believe during the weddings. Want me to get into that? Well, anyhow, we had certain instances. It was used for mainly weddings, and different organizations would come up here and use it, and that's why it was built, so we were happy about that. Well, one day I got a very peculiar phone call, and I won't mention any names, and this woman called me and said, I'd like to reserve the chapel, getting married on such and such a date, and I said, okay, I'll write you up. So anyhow, the guy that she was married, he was a very good carpenter on the island. Everybody knew him, did a lot of drinking. And so the wedding, the day that it came off, before these houses were over here, had nothing but a vacant lot. All of this was used for parking lots. The hill from the top down to the bottom, packed. Well, the wedding started, she came riding up here on a white horse, and she told me, she said, the wedding is very unusual, and that I'd like to be married next to my horse. And that's when I owned the place, and they had nothing but plexiglass windows in here. And she said, "Do you think we can take one of these windows out, because I want to be married next to my horse?" And you haven't heard this yourself. And so we took this window out. I stood outside with the guy that had the big white horse, and we were holding the horse in the window. The guy was standing over here, she was standing here, and she had her hand on the horse's head, kind of scratching it. And so, anyhow, make a long story short, after the wedding was over, she had a nice evening gown, wedding gown on, cowboy boots, stirrups, and the works. She jumps on the horse, takes off down the hill, and that was it. The guy was still standing there. He didn't know what was going on, and found out later that she married the horse. So anyhow, I ran into her a couple of years later over the IGA, and I almost said, "Well, how does the marriage come along?" And I thought, I better leave well enough alone. That's the last I saw. I did told me they got a divorce later on. How I've lived as long as I have, because all of those people are dead now. And here I am still going.
Going what?
But anyhow, going back to the founder, who was my mother, Alene Carter, she had done a lot of work with juveniles and people of that nature, and jail people. Matter of fact, she kept this, won't mention any names, this guy had shot and killed the chief of police in San Antonio, and my dad was a judge at that time, and they were going to fry him, and for some, I don't know exactly what happened, but she saved him from being put in the electric chair. And he got out of prison later on, and when he was just a bum running around shooting people, he was a big shot. Everybody looked up to him. But when they put him back in jail, he was a big shot again. And what he did to go back to jail, he went into a bar, the old-fashioned thing, and shot up all the mirrors and the whole works with, I don't know how many people he shot, and they put him back in just so he could become a big shot again. And she worked with people like that all the time, and I look back now, and she had a lot of meetings where it was one-on-one with her. And why she wasn't attacked, I'll never know. But that is right behind Rick Pratt. There's a picture of the old homestead with the observatory on top that she taught astronomy, and it's a 5-inch telescope.
Mention that quote there too, Frank.
Oh, okay. She also did a lot of writing, very literary person, which I've never been. And she wrote 2 books of poetry, and one was named Doubt Not the Dream, and the other was Halo of Love. And can't find one of the volumes. And then she was also put into the Hall of Fame. What is the word, John?
Hall of Fame,
Trying to think.
poet laureate.
She was a poet laureate. She was through Austin and the governor. She was made the poet laureate of the state of Texas. So she made quite a name for herself. Anything else? I don't know if this is for the records or not, but sure, whatever. I'd come down on weekends, and I worked for a bank, and I was getting paid. Actually, I had to pay them for the first 6 months I worked there. That's how bad it was. And so I had to have extra income, so I saw the potential down here of rentals. And so I have 6 houses. I bought the house down here for $300 after a hurricane, moved it in, and rented it out to, you remember, Tony? Big old, yeah,
Big
Tony,
yeah.
He's now deceased.
Tony's dead?
He and his brother both, yeah, they overdrank and overindulged in everything. But anyhow, I'd come down on weekends and work my tail off, and then I'd have to fight the vandals. Over here where Atwell lives now, they had a bunch of little, John used to live in one of them, little houses,
Yeah.
little shacks. Then they had a bigger house there, and he couldn't make the payments of the contractor out of San Antonio, so I think he lost it.
Negative pains.
Believe it or not, that thing went down to $22,000, the sale price on that. I think that it finally was bought at around $50,000. But when I'd come down, they would get out, these people would break in the houses, they would throw beer bottles here at the church, the chapel, and I had about that much glass, broken glass, all strung out here where the bottles would hit and break. And every once in a while, the bottle, one of them would go flying over the house and hit my house, and then that's when I'd come out with my gun, and you'd see them run. And I really think back in those days, I'd probably shot them.
How did John come into that? How did John come into that?
John came in the picture, it's the same area when I was having all the vandal problems, and this woman that lived in this 2-story house, she was a police dispatcher, and we sort of got together.
What year was it, Frank?
20, it must have been 20
20,
years ago.
25 years.
Yeah. And she said, I know you're having a lot of problems with those vandals, and she said, I'll call you and let you know if I see any suspicious people going up there. So one day she called, and this guy tried to kill me. He really did. And it was in spring break. And I had a little trail, which we no longer have, coming up here, and I had taken a aluminum baseball, I was playing softball at the time, aluminum baseball bat, and stuck it right in the grass next to the little trail coming up here. And I came up, and here was this big, fat Mexican guy. He was doped up, his eyes were popping out and everything. And I asked him, I said, what are you doing up here? And he started cursing at me. And he had a long neck beer bottle about as far as this, and he took it right in my head, and it went right by my head, and then he comes after me. Well, I decked him with the bat, broke his arm, could have killed him, did real easy. And there was 2 of them. The other guy was an Anglo. He backed off into, it used to be a barbed wire fence. He got hung up in the fence. I should have done him in right there. But he took off, and they both started running. And they got away. And later on, my tenant, he said, hey, I saw your friend downtown. And I said, what was he doing? He said, well, he had his arm in a sling. He's probably looking for you. So anyhow, that was the end of that. But it just one thing after the other. When my current neighbor over here built his house, I have not had any trouble at all. It's been very, very peaceful. It's the best thing that ever happened. But he does not appreciate the CD that we have now, with my sister-in-law giving the whole land, of the hour. And if anybody wants to see it, I can plug it in, and I know Luke's heard it plenty of times. I imagine Rick hadn't heard it with Grundy. But
Yeah.
have you heard it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Do we want to do this anymore?
So
Yeah,
sure.
You didn't get all of the ceiling, did you?
You got the end wall too?
All right, I guess the final episode here is from the book of Revelations. Here's the Lord with the keys to heaven and hell. There are 4 evangelical symbols: the lion, the ox, the eagle, the face of a man. These are the horsemen of the apocalypse. This is a red horse, a white one, I think a pale horse or death. In each corner, I think there were the winds. This is a wind. This is a wind. For the 4 directions, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 7. 6 or 7 angels with trumpets, and they announce various things that happen to the earth. It's a very special book. There's actually a curse or a blessing in it. If you read it, you need to take it very seriously. But apparently, it's not something that can be changed or altered. And so I've tried to get as close to that book as I can. This is groups of thousands, 20,000 with palm branches and wearing white garments. These plagues that happened concern creatures that sting, deaths, tribulations, and anxieties. It's a prayerful thing. You have to kind of be cautious about. But it's something that I wanted to try and present in a way people can be introduced to. I guess that just about does it. I think I'm planning on finishing the interior of this door with the 7 lamps of the churches, which is in that particular book. And there's also a sea of glass near the throne. And so these 2 panels yet, we might, I think, Frank, this door was put in new here.
That is a replacement door.
Yeah. So we may do a couple more scenes in that. But aside from these waves that surround this place, why, that's about it.
And I said, let me tell you something, it is going to happen sooner or later. I said, you better get a rail up there before somebody falls. I'll see you in the fall.
You tell him when old 84-year-old ladies come up here like crutches.
You know,
And if anybody can do it, I know
this is my
you could.
replacement right
Well, I
here.
did.
Yes, she is a person who is if for some reason I'm on my way back to Austin and I fall asleep to go off the road, you are the person to have to do what ever has to be done here. All right?
Well, okay.
I mean, if I didn't have a replacement, I've got to be kidding myself.
It was for the rededication of the chapel after a lot of reconstruction had gone on.
Yeah.
He did say that.
Oh, he did?
say it?
Oh, okay.
I didn't catch
But
that.
at that, there was a vote. There was a vote.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't going to say it because he might not.
He might not appreciate
Yeah,
that.
but
He
he
was
brought in.
for whitewashing over this art.
Oh, my God.
Frank's brother wanted to whitewash the walls to take it back to what
David.
was more
David, he
which
did.
was more original. And so part of this ice cream and cake party was that the people were voting whether to whitewash or to keep the art.
Yeah.
And that is when I met
Thank
Frank.
goodness something's
Well, what was
going
the
to
vote?
Democratic vote.
But
What was the vote?
the vote was to keep the art.
Obviously.
Yeah. So once again,
Everybody gotta have a hand.
John, I'll tell you now, since she brought it up, the vote was 102 to 2, I think. And it was no reflection on your ability, it was the idea of, it was was always white.
Yeah,
And David wanted it white.
yeah.
And his expression was, it was too hippified.
You know, images are a funny thing. It's almost like something that we just don't, we try and, people in general, just try and coalesce all their stuff into an image of something and forget what its meaning is. And sometimes if there were no images, we might be better off, you know?
Well, you know, the thing is, it was the greatest generation, which was back in the 40s. And it was all of that crowd, and they couldn't understand this. I was probably one of them myself.
Well,
But you see, most of these people were of a different generation, you know.
yeah.
And they said, yeah, it was great, but my brother and myself, we were from the 40s, which is supposed to be the greatest generation, you know.
Well, Frank, I take exception to that. I mean, I realize there is a gap between us. I
That's right.
understand that.
Yeah.
It's pretty well healed over.
All right.
At least in my family.
Oh, well.
That's great.
Across Jesus line today, they used to have a crucified Jesus.
I have